Welcome back to ILTV. The IDF announced the Golani Brigade has returned to fighting in the Gaza Strip this week and has begun operating in the Rafah area. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian has the latest on the war against Hamas.
With its return to fighting under the 36th Division in Gaza, the IDF says throughout the week the Golani Brigade already located and destroyed remaining terror infrastructure in the Rafah area. With the ground offensive continuing to expand, the new IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir held a situational assessment in the area of the Mirage corridor located in between Rafah and Khan Yunis and in combat zones. Zamir told troops they are operating in areas for the first time since the war and are expected to defeat Hamas's Rafah brigade. Zamir said the renewed operation caught Hamas by surprise and has so far resulted in the elimination of dozens of terrorists and led to the location of numerous weapons. Over the last 24 hours, the Air Force struck more than 45 terror targets in Gaza. According to the IDF, they say the strikes were carried out on weapon production sites, a launch site containing rockets preparing to be used against Israel, military buildings, weapon depots, and terrorist cells. As Israel continues its air campaign against the terrorist organization, Channel 12 in Israel reports the IDF has only destroyed 25% of the tunnels inside of Gaza, citing sources from within Israel's security establishment. The report also says the security establishment estimates there are many smuggling tunnels in between Egypt and Gaza. Therefore, maintaining the Fidelity corridor, after all, might not prevent weapons smuggling inside of the Gaza Strip.
Well, despite the nuclear talks, which are set to take place Saturday, the Islamic Republic's obsession with Israel's destruction continues, even as its proxies pay the price. While Hezbollah signals a desire to negotiate after suffering heavy losses, Tehran is now arming Iraqi militias with long-range missiles, exposing the regime's true intentions. Let's take a closer look.
Israel's enemies are slowly starting to learn the cost of proxy warfare, but not all of them. Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed terror group in Lebanon, is signaling a willingness to negotiate after months of escalation on Israel's northern border. Reports indicate the group is now looking for a diplomatic way out, a marked shift after suffering serious losses at the hands of the IDF. But while Hezbollah may be backing down, another proxy of the Islamic regime in Iran has yet to get the message. According to U.S. intelligence, the IRGC has begun sending long-range missiles to Shiite militias in Iraq, escalating its military threat against Israel from a new front. This move is seen as a strategic attempt to expand the range of attacks against Israeli targets, proving once again that the regime in Tehran isn't interested in de-escalation. This aggression comes as indirect talks on Iran's nuclear program are set to take place Saturday with the United States. But Tehran's actions speak louder than any negotiation room. The weapon shipments to Iraq make one thing clear: the Islamic Republic has no intention of pursuing peace. Instead, it remains hell-bent on its genocidal goal of destroying Israel, even if it means bringing its own country to the brink. In response to the weapons shipments to terror proxies in Iraq, President Trump stated Tehran would be held responsible for all actions of Iran's proxies. As Hezbollah looks to step back from the edge, Iraq's militias may be pushed forward, pawns in a strategy that shows just how far the Islamic Republic of Iran is willing to go to wage war by proxy.
Well, joining us now to shed some light on the upcoming nuclear negotiations, as well as the threat from the Islamic Republic, is Norman Rule of United Against a Nuclear Iran. Norman, thank you for joining us today. Pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
Given the regime's latest missile transfers to these Iraqi militias, how seriously should the international community take their participation in nuclear talks, whether direct or indirect, this weekend?
During the last 20 years, Iran has participated in several different nuclear talks. In 2003 and 2013 and 15, under the Biden administration, during each of those periods, Iran provided proxies with substantial weapons. In fact, during the heart of the JCPOA, the Obama administration's nuclear deal discussions, the Quds Force was conducting robust training, weaponization, and funding of all of its proxies throughout the region. And indeed, through these upcoming discussions, Iran is going to seek to divorce its regional activities from the nuclear talks, and the Trump administration is going to attempt to to do the opposite, which is to say we're not going to have a nuclear deal if doing so just provides Iran with resources to fund militia building and terrorist building throughout the region. And I think that's going to be the challenge of Saturday's talks.
Now, Hezbollah does seem to be, at least initially, backing down after a serious defeat. Do you think that other proxies of the Islamic regime, those in Iraq or even the Houthis in Yemen, would possibly follow suit? Or are we looking at a new escalation front, especially when it comes to Iraq that just received some of these long-range missiles?
I think we're looking at a period of time when each of the proxies is going to be defanged strategically. But at the same time, each of the proxies is waiting for Iran through the Quds Force to replenish them in a post-conflict period. And the Quds Force, which is essentially untouched, which is essentially waiting for a post-conflict period to appear, is ready to do so. So the challenge is, how do we cut this logistics tie so that the diplomatic deal, perhaps with Lebanese Hezbollah in the short term, doesn't in essence buy time so that the Quds Force can show up in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months with bags of cash, weaponry, etc., to reconstitute the group's lethality.
Well, we've already seen Tehran backpedaling a little bit, insisting they won't have talks, then they won't have direct talks, and now adamantly claiming they won't deconstruct their nuclear weapons program, one of the demands of the United States. Given that, could a successful deal actually be reached, and what would that look like?
Iran's behavior is entirely consistent. Throughout the past 20 years, they have bellicose rhetoric. They deny direct talks because indirect talks are slow and break coalitions. They then seek indirect talks where they refuse to talk about regional issues, missile issues, hostage taking, and they just try to retain as much of the nuclear program as possible, and again, preserve the regional issues and missile programs. Right now, you've got a such situation where the United States and Israel and Iran are going to try to basically see what the talks could resemble. I don't think we have an idea of whether or not there will be negotiations. We just have a meeting where people are going to see whether or not there could be negotiations.
Now, finally, from a U.S. policy standpoint, I mean, what should Washington be doing differently, if anything, right now, to pressure this regime? I mean, should they even be talking about nuclear negotiations?
Absolutely. In fact, for the first time since 1988, the Iranians are under a trifecta of extraordinary pressures: politically bankrupt, economically bankrupt, extraordinary security vulnerability. The Iranian regime is facing a very difficult period. So we should have maximum pressure. They should know that there will be military action if they move towards weaponization or attacking American personnel or interests, and then push the leadership to an internal debate to make this decision, to drink the cup of poison, to say they must deconstruct their nuclear program, they must end the Quds Force as a terrorist organization, and they must act like a normal nation. The Trump administration is actually applying very traditional statecraft at a very appropriate set of circumstances.
All right, well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but I want to thank you for joining us today, Norman Roll. Thank you for your insights.
You're welcome.
Now, 3 released hostages were honored by President Donald Trump at the National Republican Congressional Committee, calling their time in captivity horrible before inviting them onto the stage. ILTV Shosh Bedrosian has the full story.
A standing ovation and room filled with applause at the National Republican Congressional Committee when President Trump called out the name of 3 released hostages in the crowd. Altogether, the 3 of them made their way up to the stage as a sea of supporters cheered them on. With sharp, pointed words, Trump said, quote, "Hamas is just a disaster. Their level of hatred," he said. "These people, what they had to go through is just horrible." Aviva Siegel, her husband Keith Siegel, and Deir Horn were honored by the president at the event. Aviva and Keith were kidnapped from their home on Kfar Aza, where the two were held together in Hamas captivity for 50-plus days when Aviva was then released in the first ceasefire deal in November of 2023. For more than a year later, she fought tirelessly for Keith to be released, who is an American citizen and is from North Carolina. He was in Hamas captivity for 484 days and spent months isolated and completely alone. In a recent 60 Minutes interview, he said he witnessed women being sexually assaulted in captivity and saw the worst versions of humanity. Released hostage Yair Horn was in Hamas captivity for 498 days, also held in deplorable conditions inside of Hamas tunnels. He was kidnapped from his home on Kibbutz Nir Oz and was with his brother Eitan when terrorists invaded the kibbutz on October 7th. The men were held together inside of Gaza at some point, but eventually were separated when Yair was released. Hamas released a propaganda video of Eitan after Yair was released, where he was pleading for his life and for a deal to be made.
When we didn't see the light, but we feel, when we heard President Trump get elected, we knew there is now someone who makes the things happen.
Released hostages credit Trump for securing the most recent ceasefire deal, but are pushing him and the Israeli government to ensure the rest of the 59 hostages are also brought back home.
Our Majd al-Shams series continues. Historic changes are happening in the Druze communities in the Golan Heights, and they're hoping to be the bridge that creates peace in the region. After a group of religious Druze leaders from Syria entered the country last month for the first time in 5 decades, ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian has the full story.
When you're standing on this rooftop in the small Druze village of Kenya, you can nearly see the entire Upper Galilee and even into Lebanon. Mayor Wael Mogarbi says his little village in the mountain has been caught in the middle of Hezbollah's rocket attacks and Israel's response to it since October 7th.
Interception
here,
of the Iron Dome, you could see.
In
our area, I sit in my home, and I see the rocket and see all the fire.
But his village, the Druze village of Majd al-Shams, and cities in the Upper Galilee are trying to get their lives back on track as the economy took a major hit when people fled their homes because of the war.
The last 2 and 3 months, all the people they back to work in Mitula and also in Kiryat Shmona. We feel free here.
Over the last few years and since the war started, Mogarbi says more Druze in the Golan Heights are starting to become Israeli citizens.
When I come to be a mayor in the local in Kenya, we have only 33 citizenship in Israel, from Israel, and now. Do you know what's the number?
Tell me.
1,000 citizenship, and every day, so the people here in Kenya, they want to take a citizenship of Israel.
While there is a strong connection between the Druze communities inside of Israel, the Golan Heights, and in Syria, decades of living under different governments have shaped distinct identities. Israeli Druze communities are well integrated into Israeli society, with many of them serving in the IDF and in the public sector. Meanwhile, Druze in the Golan Heights have only recently begun weighing closer ties to Israel because of the changes in the region and likely after the Syrian civil war. Mogarbi believes there could be even more hope on the horizon after the fall of the Assad regime. When Israel captured the Golan Heights in 1967, Druze villages were divided by the new border, separating families and even cutting off communication between them for safety purposes. Although all were offered Israeli citizenship, only a minority of them took the opportunity.
First day when Assad left Syria, so I feel not good with our family there. I sent him a message, and a few minutes I have a call from him, from my family there.
Last month, even more history was made when Israeli Druze welcomed a delegation of 100 Druze religious leaders from Syria as they crossed the border into Majd al-Shams. It was their first visit back to Israel in 50 years as they spent time at religious Druze sites, but locals say it was all made possible after the fall of the Assad regime.
History here. We feel something changed in the Golan Heights and also in Syria. I think they go to do something for this area.
The high-profile Druze visit came at the same time Defense Minister Israel Katz announced a potentially new pilot program that could allow 40 Syrian Druze to work in agriculture in the Golan Heights, according to Ynet. Osama Ajami, a business lawyer, says it could be a turning point for the region as the agriculture industry took a hit during the war.
When we are talking about average salaries of $20 a month for the Syrian citizen, and here we are talking about like $1,500, the minimum salary. That will definitely lead to huge benefits for the both sides. They are part of us, and we want them to be better and be better also economically. And for me, it's like a historical moment.
Israeli Druze believe the Golan Heights could be a region that helps instill peace and stability in the Middle East if opportunities extend beyond its borders.
Now finally we are not at the end of the world. Maybe it will be a bridge for the other side, for the East, and for the global peace, or at least regional peace.
And joining us now is Rabbi Tuli Weiss of Israel 365 Action to talk with us about this Passover holiday and his new project, the Sovereignty Seder. Rabbi Weiss, thank you so much for joining us. Pesach is just around the corner. If you could briefly share some of the customs, the traditions of Passover for our viewers. For example, what is a Seder?
Right. So the Seder is the Passover meal, and every family has a Seder, but every Seder is a little bit different. Yet there are themes that occur in everybody's Seder, themes where we recount the story from slavery to sovereignty, where the Jewish people left Egypt and went from slavery to sovereignty. And this year, Israel 365 Action created a Seder program, a Seder guide, to allow and encourage people all over the world to have really the most important conversation this year at their Seder table is go and to teach and talk about the importance of sovereignty. And what we mean by that is Israeli control over Judea and Samaria. This is the year that many are talking about Israel extending its control over Judea and Samaria, and we wanted people to have those resources in front of them.
Now, can you tell us a little bit more about this project? What's different between a regular Seder and a sovereignty Seder, as you mentioned?
Well, we're just trying to give creative ways for families to talk about the importance of going from slavery to sovereignty in ancient times and going from the Seder to sovereignty in modern times as well. So, for example, we're encouraging everybody to focus their Passover Seders on Judea and Samaria, the foods from Judea and Samaria, and the wine from Judea and Samaria. There's wonderful wine that's grown there, and we're encouraging people to purchase wine from Judea and Samaria. We're talking about putting an empty seat at the Seder table, and to think about those who have been lost to terrorism in the area, or to think about the hostages who are still not with their families. There's so many different features that we're encouraging people to do, and we're asking everybody as well to, when they break the middle matzah, which is a prominent part of the Seder, to think about the broken land of Israel, and that we hope that we will reunite all of our territory under Israeli control.
All right, well, we are unfortunately out of time, but Rabbi Weiss, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing a little bit ahead of the Passover Seder and explaining more about what that means. Thank you.
L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, Yehuda v'Shamar. Next year in Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria.
Well, the Trump administration has reportedly frozen $1 billion in federal funding at Cornell University and $790 million at Northwestern University, with the base of these audits being a violation of civil rights and the mishandling of Jew hatred on campus. This decision comes on the heels of previous acts to freeze federal funding to Harvard, Brown, Princeton, and Columbia campuses, notorious for anti-Israel encampments, which often turned violent against Jewish students over the past 18 months. University administrations have failed not only to protect the rights and safety of Jewish students, but have also failed to provide any evidence of actions being taken to combat the anti-Semitism running rampant in these institutions. Well, the Trump administration has said no more, freezing federal funding to the universities for a sum of just over $10 billion in an effort to force university boards, faculties, and administrations to finally face the music and admit that the anti-Israel movement on their own campuses is actually a national security issue that concerns not only Israel, but the United States as well. Well, Israel's High Court issued a temporary injunction preventing Prime Minister Netanyahu from firing Shin Bet chief Ronen Bar, following Netanyahu's announcement earlier last month. The court ruling determines that Bar must remain in office until April 20th at least, while Netanyahu's government and the Attorney General seek an agreement on the matter. The ruling sparked controversy as ministers in Netanyahu's government claimed judicial overreach, stating that Netanyahu is well within his rights as Prime Minister to fire Bar on the basis of the intelligence failure of October 7th. Following the IDF probe, Netanyahu announced his firing of Bar, a move that was quickly condemned by Israel's judiciary, causing a month and now more of unrest in the political sphere. Well, Israel's law book states explicitly that the government has exclusive authority over appointing and dismissing the Shin Bet head. The story comes amid tensions between the Israeli government and judiciary over the judicial role in lawmaking. And now, before you fill your 4 Passover cups this Passover, if you want to hear about the winery that's been filling glasses for over a century, it's got history, flavor, and maybe even your new favorite bottle. We took a trip up to the hills of Zichron Yaakov to find out what makes Carmel Winery so special. Let's take a look.
With Pesach just around the corner and the 4 cups waiting to be filled, lies Carmel Wineries, just inland from the Mediterranean in the hills of Zichron Yaakov. One of Israel's oldest and most iconic wineries. Blending tradition with innovation, Carmel crafts wines that reflect the land, the climate, and the spirit of Israel. Grapes are sourced from across the country to create wines that are proudly and uniquely Israeli.
Hello everyone, my name is Iftach. I'm the chief winemaker of Carmel Winery. We are now on a board of natural reserve that's called Shmurat Alona.
Here, nature and tradition work hand in hand. From pruning to harvest, every vine is nurtured by sun, soil, and generations of passion. After harvesting, the grapes begin their journey, fermented, aged in oak barrels, and transformed into wines that tell a story with every sip.
In Zichron area, we are cultivating and growing Grenache Blanc, Colombar, White. We have some amazing vineyard of Carignan, vineyard of Argaman, very unique, that all part of a great blend of Mediterranean vat that we love.
And these blends, they're not just delicious, they're distinctly Israeli. Founded over 140 years ago with the vision of the Rothschild family, Carmel was once a state-of-the-art winery, far ahead of its time. And that spirit lives on.
According to the Rothschild family vision, we continue to research and to innovate. We are always looking for the sweet point between our legacy, of course, and the innovation, and I think we found it.
Today, world-class winemakers from across the globe bring expertise and a deep respect for this land. With a deep commitment to sustainability, Carmel ensures every bottle has a low environmental impact because the future deserves fine wine too.
I invite you to the visitor center of Carmel Winery in Zichron Yaakov. You can find here the best wine tasting in Israel, this is my opinion, with the best tour guide that will lead you here in the old ancient cellar and will give you to taste the wine with maybe some cheeses. Excellent.
Whether you're a seasoned connoisseur or just discovering wine, Carmel offers an impressive array of wines, perfect for any occasion. Carmel Wineries, rooted in heritage, grown with passion, poured with pride.
L'chaim.
L'chaim, to life, to flavor, to Israel.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of around 15 degrees Celsius or 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And tomorrow we'll see cloudy skies alongside steady temperatures, seeing highs of about 19 degrees Celsius or 66 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, ILTV.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you for watching.